Hello, hello, and that's going. Yes, so good.
And we will clap to sync audio.
I have known you for a long time. Thank you for spending some time. And finally, I really learned something so important because I asked you, I said, regenerative, explain, you explained it to me, now explain it to folks because people like me sort of didn't want to ask the dumb question.
What is regenerative
What is
agriculture?
regenerative? Yeah, and what does it
Yeah.
mean to me?
And what does it mean? So, one of the things that I think is so important to get out of the gate is like the path we're on has led us to where we are.
Yeah.
Right? And so, if we want a different outcome, we're going to have to do things a little bit different,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so that's where regenerative agriculture really comes in. It challenges the status quo of how we're producing our food. Okay, and so in in what is regenerative agriculture, we need to look at what is conventional agriculture. And so
Yeah.
what that is we take land, we till it up, we make it bare, we start from this fresh, right?
Right.
Start from this basic, and then we put in our soybeans or our cotton or our wheat or our rice or whatever that singular crop is. Well, in doing so, you're breaking a lot of rules of nature.
Yeah.
You're breaking a lot of rules of how things are supposed to be. So, you've got to depend on things that are also outside of nature, right? That's where our sides come in. That side meaning kill, right?
Right.
Homicide, suicides, kill. So it's herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. We now have a weaker environment that's not working with each other because we're growing a singular crop. Because in nature, we don't have singular anythings.
Right.
We have trees with shrubs, with forbs, with grasses. They're all intermingling.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have animals, right?
Right.
That's a big part of the system. So what regenerative agriculture does is it goes back to nature. We don't want to have a bare soil. We don't ever want to see this bare ground like we have
Right.
in conventional agriculture. So in the regenerative principles, they keep it covered. So they use cover crops. They plant into the cover crops. They do these methods where they compact what's living there. They always keep the ground covered,
Yeah.
which feeds the soil microbes. It feeds worms. It feeds we have animals that go over. Now we have dung beetles that are doing all these things. So regenerative is building that soil because that soil really is where it
Yeah.
all starts. So
Right.
when we look at the two different models, we're destroying the soil, what we're doing with conventional agriculture, or we're building the soil. We're rebuilding is regenerative.
And so we had a dinner at Lake Benui. Ended up with about 18 people, and for the first time, I'm sure nearly all of them had very good beef from John's farm. Everybody commented on it, wanted to buy more. So, in terms of the practicality, it's not like, okay, now you got to hold your nose and eat it. It was very good. Everybody liked it. And that's, I think, the pleasant surprise in the practical side of, okay, bring it to your table, eat it. And it's great. And it's good for you.
It is. It is. It is. I keep referring back to these principles of nature, right?
Right.
And so another comparison that we've got to have is our livestock industry, right? And so if we take chicken, for example,
Right.
we confine them into a big artificial house with
Right.
light, heat, or cool. We feed them a feed that they're not natural. It's wheat and soy and corn, right? It's a different combination. And we are just completely disconnecting that animal from nature. Well, when you take that compared to a pasture-raised operation to where they have fresh grass that it gets moved around every
Right.
day, you have a completely different profile of that meat, and it tastes completely different. If
Yeah.
you get something from the store, it has no flavor.
Right.
It really doesn't.
Right.
But when you have a locally raised animal that's had bugs and seeds and grasses and feed, right? You still feed.
Right.
Chickens still take feed. But you're getting a wider spectrum of the building blocks of life.
Right.
And you can taste the difference.
Well, and the other thing, when I visited John's farm, it hadn't rained. This is a couple weeks ago, and I said to him, I said I was surprised that his grass was green, and it's just part of how you don't overgraze it, you don't get it down to the nub. But all of this to swing around to, we're so glad that you and Lake Benui and several other people will support and be co-sponsors with Longevity is Local. That's what we're talking about. It will be in Hot Springs, November 1. And we were saying a minute ago, I want folks to understand, I believe you're the most knowledgeable guy, at least that I know, because you not only from the agriculture side, and I know folks come to me and McGee sometime soon, or maybe some of you already know it, but you know so much about all these products, and you've got the right combination because people are buying. They're here. It's great. You have a long reputation for that. So thank you for sharing with us. But what's one of those two big milestone things that you crossed over that, particularly if you see regenerative in today's world? What we were talking about somebody who was sick the other day. I mean, what can you say is like, hey, what would resonate so quickly?
I have people come to me for solutions, right, and guidance, and that based off health. And what we're able to do is transition into a conversation on regenerative agriculture, a transition into the practices or the mindset, the things that we've been told. But we live in a time that chronic disease is at epidemic levels, right?
Yes.
And so my story is my oldest baby was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So cancer is my focal point.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is solutions. We're talking about solutions to this chronic disease epidemic, right? And
Right.
it just so happens to be the tool is food. It is one of the
Right.
the tools. So with the milestones, it's that because of the struggles, the adversity that we've faced, I've questioned the status quo,
Yeah.
and I have seen that, hey, what we're doing isn't working.
So the personal, as you said, the pain point, when it really is right here, people will pay attention. And again, as we were sharing earlier, that was my story. You know, I'm healthy. I'm doing things, 300-mile exercise in the fall, and then boom, June, I'm laying on the kitchen floor. My arm doesn't work.
Right.
And then it's unfortunate that's what it takes, but
That's the fact of life. That's like
Yeah.
it doesn't it. We don't have our attention grabbed until it hurts bad enough.
Exactly. However, again, part of our intention out of what happens on November 1 is become informed. And I loved your post on Facebook this week. You know, we can take back the power. We can choose. We can, as I was saying a minute ago, you know, if you have good information, you can make good decisions.
Right.
And that's critical that we not take everything that just floats across Facebook, but take the deep dive, understand, talk to folks like you who really understand. And will tell the truth.
Well, incentive dictates outcome.
Yeah.
Every time, right? And so we really got to question what the motivation behind somebody is, right? Like I make a living off of selling food, right? And so the difference between me and maybe somebody, another quote unquote influencer, right, is that what to wait till the airplane. That's the problem being so close to the Little Rock Airport.
Well, they'll edit that part out.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Okay, and while we're sort of off for a second, is this going along? Anything else I should ask that you'd like to?
No, it's
Okay.
a good organic conversation. With incentive dictates outcome. It still hurts bad enough for me
Right.
with Lander, with
Right.
my child, that I don't ever want to see anybody else go through
Right.
that. So like it's that's my motivation. I don't
Right.
want to see other people prevent, hopefully, what's going on, but help them through if not. And we have gotten so disconnected, whether it's farming or medicine, from what works,
Yeah.
right? What fuels the human body, that we're getting really, really bad advice from every area. And
Yeah.
so I don't actually fall into what the allopathic or Western medicine, or necessarily even the functional medicine side of it, which is the alternative functional.
Right.
It has a lot of different names, because I personally feel like they're all missing a whole lot, right?
Right.
A whole lot. So what I've found with that is that the problems that we face are because of what's called centralization. Okay,
Right.
and it's what that means is there is a singular or a few controllers of something, right? Whether
Right.
that's medicine, whether that's agriculture, whether that's big food. So we can start naming off these massive corporations.
Right.
That's centralization.
Right.
What is decentralized is we have a farmer next door that is raising, 10 cows to produce beef a year.
Right.
That goes for a local producer to a local processor to a local family. That's decentralized. Nobody really controls that
Right.
on the outside coming in. Whereas one of these big meat conglomerates is going to have hundreds of thousands of livestock
Right.
from these confined feeding operations. They aggregate them, they process them together, and one thing that really got my attention was two things. In a pound of beef, 1 pound of beef from a grocery store that comes from one of these big conglomerates could have 1,000 or more different animals in it. 1 pound of beef.
Oh my gosh.
So think about that, because you're running at such a high speed. Some of these processors are processing 10,000 animals a day, 100,000 animals a day. It's a factory, right? It's not even food anymore. We're getting to the point that it's factory.
Right.
And so they're cutting trimmings as they go down this conveyor belt. They put in this bin or whatever, and then it gets ground up, right? So that's why you have so many different ones in there. So that's one that's like you don't even know what you're eating, right? Versus that farmer, you're getting one animal, right? You might buy a quarter or a half or a whole animal to fill your freezer. You've got all the different cuts, but it's from one animal,
Right.
and you know how it lived. The other thing is, as I've studied health and nutrition, minerals are such a massive part of being healthy.
Yes.
Massive. And so one mineral that I know that basically everybody's deficient in is going to be copper. Okay? Copper. So what we're told is that the way you get copper is to eat liver. Liver is loaded with copper. But because of the network I've built out and the people I work with, they're testing livers for nutrient value. Guess what? No copper. There's no copper. So the health food that we're supposed to be eating to get these nutrients is not in there. Why? Because they are raised on a farm. They're aggregated into a confined feeding operation. They're fed soy and corn. They're fattened up. They're an obese, sick animal that has got to have antibiotics and vaccines and all this crap pumped into them because they're sick.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not living natural. It goes back to what I'm talking about with we breaking all the natural cycles. So now we have sick animals pumped with all kinds of chemicals from pharmaceutical industries.
Yeah.
Without the appropriate nutrition that we have. And so that's why that tastes different, what you were talking about from John and Betty.
Right.
It's a completely different thing.
Well, it wasn't just, again, a few people. Everybody Sunday night raved about it. I mean, and so, again, it's not talking about theoretically or, again, the whole theme of longevity is local. It's right here in our backyard.
And
no pun intended.
And what's beautiful about this is that it can be replicated anywhere.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're not talking about a system that is taking over the world. We're talking about hubs.
Right.
Right? It can be smaller or larger, various sizes, right? But it can be replicated. What got us in trouble is when we took on the mentality. And so Secretary of Ag Butts was notorious for saying, get bigger, get out. It was consolidate, scale, become a factory, a linear model. And that destroyed small farms.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Earl Butts, 1970s is when this really, really just started ramping up. That is the exact opposite of what I'm talking about, what we're talking about, where we have a shorter food chain where locals feeding local. We should not be trying to feed the world. We should be feeding our families and our communities.
Yes.
And when everybody's doing that, we feed the world.
Right. So Friday, November 1, we also, I think we'll have Damon Helton from the farm at Barefeet Bend. That's interesting. Just my grandfather had a farm in Lonsdale.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you all have done a couple of events and things, and tell us about his history. He's been at it a while.
Damon is honestly one of the OGs, so to speak, in the movement. He's been a dear friend of mine for many years. He is a combat veteran, Army Ranger, Special Forces. He's a tough dude, but he's good as gold. I love the man. And he is so passionate about this too, and understands it from a whole different angle, a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
But he's put in the groundwork. You know,
Yeah.
the farm down there at Lonsdale is it's beautiful for
Yeah.
one, but he's utilizing spring water. And I think that's something else we don't talk about.
Yes.
It's like all the animals are drinking trash water when we get them out of the store.
Yeah.
Like they are. It's going to be a city water. So everything that we hear of, we hear fluoride's an issue. All these kind of birth control pills, everything that's in the water. Well, the animals are drinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so when somebody like Damon has got this clean, pristine, think Mountain Valley water, right?
Oh yeah.
This is the same type of water that his animals are drinking.
Right.
It's a game changer.
Well, and incidentally, I'd been focused on water before, and then just recently, because I started taking and hauling home the true mineral water out of hot springs. Of course, it's free, but then you stumble upon, and I've told people there's 2 studies that's on WebMD, that the true mineral water, which is very, very few on the market, really 1 or 2, it can lower your blood pressure, and then they have studies that it will lower cholesterol. And so again, you hit the nail on the head. Water is everything.
Water's massive.
It is massive, and with the impending heat, and depending on your forecast, I have said water's the new gold. It really is. I mean, it's going to be so valuable. One last thing, and the point of longevity, even to get people's attention, I think is critical, because it's not like, okay, well, I heard somebody the other day, it's like, there's no biohack. Forget this hacking, this shortcut. We always think there's no shortcuts in nature, is there? No. I mean, you got to sow the seed, you got to have the right amount, and then you reap. So the point of longevity, not only as the topic, but trying to get people thinking, hey, I'm going to do this, and then my life will be better tomorrow. It's not like I'm building for 20 years from now. This stuff really, and I know I shared earlier, there was one particular testimony of a friend of mine who made a lot of headway in just 60 days. So it's not like, oh, you got to suffer through this for a year and then hopefully, no, it's right away. Yeah. Well, listen, what else can we share in the final moments? The sun is setting, it's beautiful here, but it's still hot.
It's hot, and we got mosquitoes coming out, but that's Arkansas.
That's
right?
Arkansas. And we're glad to be here. So.
Absolutely. No, I think the takeaway is just a lot of different terms for it, but the centralization of everything has caused the problems. It really has. It is, and the solution is to question the status quo, question what we're doing that got us here, and make a decision that gets us away, because we're not going to overcome it. Their game, we got to play our own game, and our own game is supporting our neighbors.
And I appreciate so much that you had chosen and suggested we'll put on the poster that 2 roads diverge in the woods, and I took the one less traveled by, and that made all the difference. So it is such, as Robert Frost says, it makes all the difference. So if we can get folks to see you can choose the other path, it's a better path, and let's do that as a community. We're here to support you, not send you down the road without anything, and make that happen. So absolutely. Thank you.
Got this.
That was easy. You've only done that 100 times.
Or 500.